First, prepare for a few surprises concerning its illustrious director as we reveal the secret life of Sergei Eisenstein.
My life has passed in a blur. Never a backward glance as I leapt from one train to another. Always in a hurry. Suddenly, in my 50th year, I was struck by the horrible feeling that I had held on to nothing, understood nothing. Now I want to revisit my lost time, like those junk stalls and second-hand bookshops that I loved browsing in. My name is Sergei Mikhailovich Eisenstein. I was born in Riga in 1898. I was a model child, diligent, obedient, and polite. A typical boy from a good family. I have nothing on my conscience, not even a broken watch, tortured flies, or smashed vases. The cruelty that I did not inflict on flies or frogs is to be found in my work as a filmmaker. In my films, children are cast into the flames, animals are quartered, and farmers' heads are crushed by horses' hooves. Oh, that's quite enough of that. I have to tell you, quite frankly, you are in the company of an unpleasant author. Yet, even now, I feel as if I was still only 12 years old. This is my shame, also my pride. When I look in the mirror, I see myself as David Copperfield, frail, helpless, and very shy. A character deeply influenced by his parents. My father was a civil engineer and architect, and very vain. He was a domestic tyrant like old Grande in Balzac's novel. He always wore black lacquered boots with rounded toes. The seeds of social protest were planted in me not by injustice or deprivation, but by that master symbol of social tyranny, father. My father and mother never thought about how to talk to their child. I was bored by the stuffy parties they gave. Mother was authoritarian too, and did not get on well with father. No doubt their divorce was due to the fact that my mother was sensual, or as the Americans say, oversexed, while my father was the opposite. My parents' divorce had such an impact that it completely destroyed any concept of family life for me. My bedroom was close to theirs. Every night, even with my head buried under the pillow, I could hear the same violent quarrel. Mother screamed that father was a thief. Father yelled that mother was a whore. Until one day, mother said goodbye to me and left in tears. After the household fell apart, school also became meaningless. I made no real friends. But it was at school that I picked up the first germs of atheism. The almost hysterical religion of my childhood and the mystic revelations of my youth gave way to skepticism. Part of the blame lay with my religious teachers. My spiritual mentor was an imposing man. When he said Mass, dressed in a silvery blue chasuble, with his arms raised high, it seemed that the heavens had opened and grace was pouring down on this sinful world. My weakness for the ornate stems from such intoxicating memories. At school, everything was different. The same priest drove us relentlessly through the catechism and stifled my religious passion with his quibbling arguments. My teachers did the rest with their ugly grimaces, which I used to draw. During those school years, my passion was drawing. I used to draw anything, everything, wherever I happened to be. You may be surprised to learn that it was Sergei Eisenstein who drew these comic strips, but it was. I was an infant prodigy with my caricatures and comic strips. Later, during the 20s, I was considered one of the most promising satirical cartoonists in the Soviet Union. As a child, I used to observe everything and fill untold amounts of paper with my sketches. I would draw characters from novels and the figures from the Commedia dell'arte. At 18, I signed myself Sergei, an English pun on my first name, on the cartoons and quite fierce political caricatures that I sold to various newspapers and magazines. This is my father, shocked and terrified by the 1917 revolution. After witnessing the revolution on the streets of Petersburg, I had a taste of military life with its endless marching and drill and idleness. I saw death at first hand and had a foretaste of the themes of my future films. I studied to become a civil engineer, dutifully following in my father's footsteps, until I realized that this wasn't the right profession for me. Drawing, however, continued to be my passion. I discovered the theater, and through it a world of fantasy and expression I had not suspected. The rich and the poor, the colorful spectacle of history, the characters of Shakespearean tragedy, the king, the queen, and every actor's dream, Hamlet. Then the masks of the Commedia dell'arte, Smeraldina, Pantalone, Brighella. I joined my old school and found a teacher who became my spiritual father, but who, unhappily, proved too much like my real father. I could see my father's likeness on his aquiline face with its astonishing molded lips and its piercing gaze. I was fortunate to learn by watching this magician of the theater, but unfortunate to trust him as a man. While I was still a pupil at my old severe school, I began to design sets for other theater companies, and they're quite different productions. This was my attempt to fill the stage and involve the audience with my settings and costumes for the Tales of Hoffmann. For The Mexican, based on Jack London's novel, I used a different style and the strongest possible colors. My costumes for Lady Macbeth were aggressively geometrical, triangular, conical, cylindrical, evoking the themes of power, blood, and death. Child thieves, done in a cubo-futurist manner. Altogether, a great variety of styles. When I left Meyerhold in 1923, he dedicated a portrait to me with the words, "I am proud of the pupil who has now become a teacher with his own school. To Sergei Eisenstein, with my respect." This was a stimulating time for the Prolet Cult theater members. It was also when I met Pasternak and Mayakovsky. At last, I put on my first production, which was a mixture of theater, circus, and music hall, and even included a short film. The show was called Enough Simplicity in Every Wise Man, and the film was Glumov's Diary. My friend, Grisha Alexandrov, played Mandrake, the masked adventurer, complete with tailcoat and top hat. Although this was my first film, I was already introducing some notions of organic form and pathos, as well as a typology of characters, stylized like clowns' masks. I convinced myself that cinema was the synthesis of all the arts, capable of involving the audience totally. And this was my intention when I made Strike, a film with strong dramatic content conceived in contrasting episodes. Undercover police agents spy on the workers in a factory, spreading false rumors. A worker who has been accused of theft hangs himself. The rest go on strike, and as management and the police try to crush them, the struggle ends tragically. This film used the theories of character types and the montage of attraction that I was developing with a group of friends at the time. Soon, I would discover that improvisation can also play a big part in cinema. In the battleship Potyomkin, for instance, the now famous sequence of the bay, shrouded in fog, was filmed only because poor weather prevented us from shooting other scenes. Now everyone admires the dim outline of the ships at anchor, like so many hippopotamuses asleep on cotton wool. Another chance discovery, which didn't appear in the script, was the massacre on the Odessa steps. The great flight of steps appealed to me immediately, but the idea of people running and falling down it only struck me when I saw how cherry stones bounced when we spat them from the top. And to think that it was this sequence that revealed the rhythm of cinema to the world. There is a legend that in Battleship Potyomkin, I played the part of the priest. Actually, the part was played by an old gardener from Sebastopol, wearing a wig and a fan-shaped white beard. It is true that I dressed up as the priest to double for him for the rear shots of him falling downstairs. So really, I was only the stand-in. It was decided that the premiere of Potyomkin should be held at the Bolshoi Theater in December 1925 to mark the 20th anniversary of the 1905 revolution portrayed in the film. Both Edouard Tisset, my friend and cameraman, and I were in a state of high emotion. During the screening, I waited nervously in the corridor, drinking in every sound from the audience. There was some scattered applause, but only when the red flag, which we had hand-painted frame by frame, appeared on the ship's yard, did the whole audience explode with enthusiasm. There was a second outburst when the Potyomkin fired on the military headquarters in retaliation for the Odessa Steps massacre. I continued to pace the empty corridors of the Bolshoi. No one in sight. Even the ushers had gone inside, which was most unusual. And so, all alone, I waited for the third burst of applause, as the Potyomkin passes through the Admiral's squadron, flying the victorious flag of freedom, and the other ships acquiesce in the revolt. The day after Potyomkin's first showing, I had the same experience as Zola after the publication of his first novel. That morning, I woke up famous. Telegrams, telegrams, telegrams. It's marvelous to wake up famous at 27 and be ready to enjoy success. Then came October, to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the revolution, a film that was intended to appeal not only to the emotions, but to the intellect as well. October chronicles those tumultuous events in Petersburg that led from the Tsar's abdication to the Bolshevik triumph. The city of Leningrad, where we filmed, had every reason to be unhappy with us. We played havoc with its routines. We raised bridges that usually only opened at night, during the day. A dead white horse hanging over the edge of the bridge rose slowly into the sky, creating a terrifying sight for the passers-by. Everything unusual that happened in Leningrad was blamed on the October unit. If there had been a bank robbery, we'd have been accused of it. October. 30 miles of film shot to produce a final 7,000 feet. 6 months of filming, 100,000 people involved. Lighting equipment used as never before for the storming of the Winter Palace. Sometimes we would shoot for 40 or even 60 hours without a break. Despite all our commitment and hard work, the film was criticized for its symbolism and intellectual approach. But for me, the revolution was not only historical, it had to be continually reinvented. The old and the new. A film on the collectivization of farming also attracted criticism, although, strictly speaking, I had done everything that was requested and promised. In certain sequences of the old and the new, montage was combined with a primordial symbolism. The images of cows and milk in the film so impressed a Swiss dairy products company that they asked me to make advertising films for them. In the summer of 1929, I went on a tour of European cities to see how film sound systems already in use in the States were being adapted. Edward Tisse, my cameraman, and Grisha Alexandrov, my partner, traveled with me. We arrived at La Sarraz in Switzerland, where I took part in a congress of independent film enthusiasts. Madame de la Mandro, our hostess, managed to solve the political problem of my entry visa. At the congress, I met leading filmmakers and critics. Hans Richter, Leon Mousinak, Georges Schmidt, Janine Bussigneuse, and Bella Balaz. Naturally, there were heated arguments about politics, aesthetics, and film. Everything was so confused that it seemed a good idea to make a film in the form of an allegory on the struggle between independent and industrial cinema. We worked hard, but the resulting film disappeared. Was it lost? Or had we been shooting without filming the camera? No one at the Congress was ever quite sure. In Zurich, I was invited to make a scientific film about birth control. I needed money, so I said that I would do it, but only if I could have all the women in the city present at the clinic. After all, I was supposed to be a director of mass spectacles. Next, I went to Germany to investigate adding sound to my film, The Old and the New. I was fascinated by the bohemian life of Berlin with all its writers, artists, film experts and intellectuals. Behind its hectic facade of frivolity, Berlin hid a tragic decadence. During my short time there, I met some impressive people, like the filmmakers Fritz Lang and Walter Ruttmann, from whose film Symphony of a Great City these images come. The famous playwright Luigi Pirandello invited me to a restaurant where we ate sbaglione. He wanted to use the new sound techniques to have characters on the screen argue with the projector. I visited Brecht, that tenacious intellectual who uses his pen like a drill to demolish the obstacles he cannot overcome with the fires of his passion. There was also Albert Einstein, whose theory of relativity I had already studied. He gave me a photograph signed "From Einstein to Eisenstein," which made me feel very honored. The artist George Gross confessed that he based his style on the graffiti found on lavatory walls. I made my own drawings of Berlin nightlife in the same style as Gross, a frightening spectacle of refined perversion and every kind of sexual deviation. The permissiveness and anonymity of the great city, the brothels and transvestites. As I explored this underworld of sensuality, it raised again the question of my own sexual identity. Berlin forced me to reconsider my inhibitions towards women and my supposed latent homosexuality. I have never felt that impulse, although I could not deny a somewhat abnormal sexuality, at least on the mental level, like Zola or Balzac. And finally, London. Here too my film Potemkin was not allowed to be shown in public. The government apparently thought it too dangerous for the general audience. I took part in a filmmaking class taught by Hans Richter in a room near Foyle's bookshop. I played a policeman, the classic English Bobby, to everyone's surprise and amusement. I lectured at the London Film Society and visited Cambridge University. I found the atmosphere polite and unenthusiastic. Everywhere people and the press treated me with respect, very much in the English manner. I enjoyed visiting museums and libraries where I spent many interesting hours. My friend, Peter Kapitsa, invited me to the high table at Trinity College, where I was deeply impressed by the antiphonal reading of the Latin grace beneath those high arches soaring into the gloom of Gothic naves. Years later, that evening at Trinity helped shape the scene around Anastasia's coffin in Ivan the Terrible. The quiet atmosphere of Cambridge was unforgettable, and I found the strange customs and rituals of the university fascinating. From England, my lecture tour took me to Holland, which I naturally associated with Van Houten's chocolate, pointed bonnets, and of course, wooden clogs. The first thing I said at my press conference in Rotterdam was, "What's happened to the clogs?" The innocent question immediately made newspaper headlines. I arrived in Paris in November 1929, full of excitement, remembering a childhood visit with my mother. Strolling through the city, I felt like a child left alone in an enchanted garden. I was soon to discover that my notoriety in France was exclusively due to the political content of my films. They claimed that my revolutionary cinema appealed only to intellectuals and socialist militants, not to the ordinary people. No one, therefore, wanted to invest in films like mine. I made a pilgrimage to visit James Joyce, who played me a recording he had made of part of Finnegan's Wake, which only confirmed how important his experiments with the interior monologue could be for the cinema. Relations between France and the Soviet Union were not good. Instead of showing my film The Old and the New, I had to give a lecture at the Sorbonne. The university was surrounded by police, like a fortress, and although nothing happened, the threat of deportation hung over me. Jean Cocteau was highly sympathetic. He begged me to forgive France for my treatment by the authorities. Finally, after months of discussion, a contract with Paramount Pictures, and I set sail for America with my new boss, Mr. Lasky. New York, the skyscrapers of New York, which didn't seem as tall as I had imagined. But the city, especially by night, made my head spin. Never in my life had I seen so many people, and cars, and the noise. I was stunned. I soon lost all sense of perspective and balance. Paramount staged a publicity campaign to launch me in America as an attractive and respectable director. Lasky gave me plenty of advice as we traveled to a Paramount convention in Atlantic City. Don't be too serious, but don't frighten them by being too frivolous. Here we are at the convention. I honestly can't remember one word of what I said. I've always found speaking in public painful. Things got worse when the old and the new were shown at the Cameo in New York. The American press was outraged by my support for the collectivization of agriculture. But I shall never forget meeting one of the cinema's greatest pioneers, D.W. Griffith, early one morning in the lobby of a Manhattan hotel. It was the 22nd of October, 1930, and we recognized each other immediately from photographs. We shook hands, but Griffith didn't want to discuss his films. Half of them are worthless, he said. I only did them so that I could make the few I really loved. So even Griffith had to fight for his films, like any beginner. At last, I left for Hollywood, where I was hoping to go into production. On Paramount's salary, Tissé, Alexandrov, Ivor Montague and I lived in a house with a swimming pool in Beverly Hills. We even had a black cook and a DeSoto car. One of the first people I met in California was Walt Disney, whom I admired enormously. Through nothing more than drawings, he brings to life those marvelous characters, Willie the Whale and Mickey Mouse. Living in Hollywood was an entertaining experience. I used to run into Rin Tin Tin, Mac Sennett, the queen of the peroxide blondes, Jean Harlow, Marlene Dietrich and her director, Joseph von Sternberg, who suffered from an inferiority complex because the film world looked down on him. On the set, he used to meditate for a long time, holding his head in his hands, although this did not seem to serve any purpose. He was in a state of depression when I saw him while he was making Morocco with Dietrich and Gary Cooper. The divine Garbo, on the other hand, never allowed any visitors on set. She found acting very hard work because she had no technique. She played everything by instinct, which meant that when she wasn't inspired, she would cry and have hysterics. While I was waiting to have a project accepted, I saw a lot of my old friends, like Douglas Fairbanks, whom I met in Moscow, along with his wife, Mary Pickford. America's sweetheart, I discovered, always carried a knife in her purse. Doug and Mary were, of course, very successful and had a business partnership with another of my friends, Charlie Chaplin. Chaplin had an extraordinary talent and real genius, but he was also a shrewd businessman. We spent many happy hours with him on his yacht or around his swimming pool, which was shaped like a bowler hat. He really enjoyed his huge success. Chaplin thought highly of me and introduced me to the novelist Upton Sinclair, who gave me the money to make a film in Mexico. Every project I had put to Paramount had been turned down, even Sutter's Gold and An American Tragedy. So, I left Hollywood for Mexico. I spent a whirlwind year in Mexico, but I can hardly bear to think about the grotesque misunderstandings which destroyed both my friendship with Sinclair and my film, Que Viva Mexico. leaving what I had shot to be mangled by others. Do you remember what Engels wrote? Movement is what attracts our attention. Only later do we think of the object that moved. It was in Mexico that I began drawing again, seeking expression in the movement of a restless, unbroken line. After my Mexican interlude, the Devil's Emissary and Bolshevik Bandit, as the American press called me, had to return home. This was what everyone in Washington and Moscow wanted. During my absence, many things had changed in Moscow. I felt like a nobody. My only activity was teaching classes at the Institute of Cinematography. Because I had been abroad, I was accused of a lack of social responsibility and of being interested only in my own ideas. It was like being put on trial. My script for a film about the history of Moscow was rejected. The message was obvious. I was supposed to engage in public self-criticism. In 1935, I started work on Bejin Meadow, which was heavily criticized, and then stopped. Eventually, I was able to make Alexander Nevsky as a contribution to raising the popular consciousness of how Russia became a single nation. My subject was patriotism, but instead of the masses, this time I dealt with a single hero, Nevsky, the Prince of Novgorod, who defeated the Teutonic Knights in the 13th century. For this film and all my later projects, I made detailed drawings while writing the script. It was my first sound film, and in it I tried to solve the problem of achieving a rhythmic correspondence between the images and Prokofiev's music. for Nevsky, I finally received official recognition, the Order of Lenin, and the film was a popular success. Even the President of the United States, Roosevelt, asked to see the film at the White House. In 1941, the American Film Index listed which film personalities had been most written about in the history of cinema, and I came fourth, after Chaplin, Griffith, and Mary Pickford. This is how far that little boy from Riga had come. The only opera I ever directed was Wagner's Die Walküre, which was staged at the Bolshoi in 1940 to mark the signing of the non-aggression pact between Germany and the Soviet Union. All that remained of the production are photographs and drawings. I tried to link the music and lighting, but the theater's resources turned out to be so inadequate that my clumsy attempts to underline the opera's emotional structure only made audiences laugh. I learned a lot from that disaster, but I never had another chance to direct opera. Meanwhile, the war was imminent, and intellectuals like me who were no longer young could only fight Nazism and racism with the weapon of ideas.
As a Russian representative of the Soviet intelligentsia, and working as I do in the sphere of Russian cinematography and Russian art, the very principle of racial hatred is foreign and loathsome to me. Basing itself on the principles of equal fraternal rights, on spiritual and material values for each nation, for each people, our country regards with indistinguished indignation any case of national oppression. But the time for calls to indignation and condemnation has passed. The time has come to fight. In this sacred struggle, the Soviet Union is uniting all people who with sword in hand are ready to rise for the right to call themselves Czechs, Poles, Dutchmen, Belgians, Russians, or Jews, because it is not only a matter of saving a nation that has given humanity great poets, thinkers, and artists, because it is not only a matter of saving a people numbering many millions of human lives, but because it is a matter of triumph of humanism over brutality, barbarism, infamy, and violence, because it is a matter of bright future for all humanity, irrespective of nationality.
Throughout the war, I continued drawing, especially when filming was impossible. Oh, those drawings. I hoarded them lovingly, like an archivist, hoping for some future discovery. I remember that even the New York Times showed an interest in them. This is my last drawing, L'après-midi d'un faune. The great historical fresco of Ivan the Terrible was my last film. Its theme was the demands of power exercised on behalf of the people, and its aesthetic references come from the pictorial and melodramatic tradition of the 18th century. My contemporary, Sergei Eisenstein, has written that it takes us back to an understanding of cinema as a powerful visual art. And, as he says, the musical dimension cannot be divorced from the visual in what is truly a symphonic film. It was for Ivan that I drew my most detailed graphic treatment. In these sketches, I anticipated every detail of the framing of shots, the visual effects, and the actors' gestures. For the first part of Ivan, which was finished in October 1944, I received our highest award, the Stalin Prize. Sergei Prokofiev was again my valued collaborator. After sound, I was now ready to tackle the last adversary, color, which, although not strictly necessary, had long been beckoning me. It was only in this second part of Ivan the Terrible, which came in for severe criticism from the central authority of the party, that I had the opportunity to use color film for the first time. And it was then that I realized that color does not stem from the cinematic material, but from the inner structure of the story, whether this is lyrical, epic, or dramatic. On the 11th of February, 1948, I abandoned my films, my books, my drawings forever. Has it really been a life? Yes. It has been a life of joy, torment, and excitement. And I can't imagine wanting to exchange it for any other.